First of all, I want to introduce Monica Dombrowski, who has served as the executive director of Winnetka Northfield. Yes, Northfield Library right over there, close. If you didn't know it. For Winnetka Northfield for 5 years and has worked in libraries for 11 years. For her work, Monica was named a Library Journal Mover and Shaker in the year 2017. Secondly, we have Kate Hall, has been executive director of the Northbrook Public Library for over 10 years after serving as director of the New Lenox Public Library and in a variety of library positions in the Chicagoland area for over 25 years. Kate was the recipient and was awarded the 2021 Illinois Library Association Librarian of the Year. Lindsay Dorfman has been executive director of the Glenview Public Library since 2020. She has more than 20 years of public library experience, and she was also named a mover and shaker, sounds great, by the Library Journal in 2019. Let's give them a big hand as they come up on the stage.
Okay, I'm going to start us off and I get to take this mask off. I'm having a little PTSD from COVID. I woke up this morning with a cold, and so wearing this mask again brings back those memories, but I didn't want to get anybody sick. So we are so delighted to be here today to talk to you about a very important and serious topic. I'm going to start today by giving you a little bit of a refresher on the First Amendment, because we can't talk about book bans and censorship and book challenges without talking about our freedom of speech. Kate is then going to share some information about what's going on in libraries now across our country. What are some of the current issues with book banning? And then Monica is gonna end the presentation to tell you about how we're responding, how libraries are responding, what we do, how we train our staff, and then she's gonna share some ways that you can help as well, okay? All right, so let's jump in here. Let me see if I can figure out how to move this. Did you remember how? Did you? Just the arrows. I'm trying here. Let's see. There we go. All right, we'll jump into the First Amendment here. So this is the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights. And this is a pretty not complicated, but in-depth amendment. There is a lot here in our First Amendment, and we could do an entire presentation on the First Amendment. But for today, we are just going to talk about one portion of that, which is this portion of the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. So what does this mean? This means that it is prohibited for the government to punish Americans for their speech. And why is this important? Why did our founders feel like it was important to add this to the First Amendment of the Constitution? What were they thinking? Well, one, our founders were inspired by the Enlightenment movement and Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke and Voltaire, who emphasized in their writings freedom of expression, tolerance of opposing viewpoints, and open debate as a way to protect liberty and check oppressive government. So this is what they were reading. This is what they were thinking as they were writing the Constitution. So Voltaire famously said, I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. So again, in this Enlightenment movement, these Enlightenment thinkers knew that it was extremely important to personal liberty for people to be able to express their opinions and to debate those opinions openly. In addition, the founders knew firsthand what it was like to live under an oppressive government. The colonialists were continuously censored, and they were punished for being critical to the crown under Britain. And so because of this experience, when they were writing that Constitution, they wanted to ensure that American citizens under this new nation had very broad free speech rights. Okay, so another interesting thing about the First Amendment is that it includes more than just speech. We say it's free speech, but it includes also the written word. It includes symbolic language, like somebody's right to burn an American flag or wear an armband in protest. It includes freedom of artistic works and creative works such as music, literature, theater, film. It also includes media and press, and it includes our right to peacefully assemble and protest. And then lastly, it includes our right to join associations and come together with like-minded people. Those are all protected under the First Amendment and our freedom of speech. And then very near and dear to our hearts as libraries, it includes intellectual freedom, which is our right to seek and receive information from all viewpoints without restriction. And that again is what your librarians and your library staff work to protect every single day. And then lastly, our freedom of speech is really essential to democracy. So we all know that a healthy democracy depends on an informed public. We need to be able to seek information, to find information, to debate information, to criticize policy. So we, as a country, as citizens, can make the best decisions for our community. All right. So moving on, not all speech is protected. There are a number of forms of speech that are not constitutional and that are considered illegal in the United States. And here's a list of what those are. And many of these are really, really hard to define. I like to say they're clear as mud. Apart from child pornography, which is extremely clear, the rest of them, the courts have grappled with trying to define what that means. And the one that I think is hardest and the court has struggled with over many years, over the centuries, is obscenity. And obscenity is one thing, one of the top things that people cite when banning books. So again, it is really hard to define this. And do you remember the quote by Justice Potter Stewart? "I'll know it when I see it." Right? Like that's not very clear. That was in 1964. And then in 1973, the courts put together what they call the Miller test. It was a case between Miller versus California. And they created this test to kind of establish some clear standards around obscenity. And in order for something to be considered obscene, it has to meet these three standards. So one, it has to appeal to a person's prurient interests, which means the average person using community standards. So whatever makes sense for their community. And you have to remember that somebody in Oak Park, Illinois might be much more tolerant of something than somebody in Oak Park, Alabama, right? So you're taking those community standards into account. So the average person using those community standards finds it appeals to an unhealthy and shameful sexual interest. So that's one. The other one is it has to be patently offensive. So the work is clearly and offensively depicts sexual conduct as defined by state law. And then the third is that it lacks any serious artistic value. So taken as a whole, the work has no serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So in a book, you might have a really raunchy sex scene in that book, and that might feel obscene, but the courts would say it's not obscene because it's part of a larger artistic work, and that larger artistic work has value. So there is one type of speech here that is missing from this list that when I really dug down and researched this, that I was surprised by. Does anybody know what is missing from this list here under unprotected speech or illegal speech? What's that? Nope, that's not what I was thinking, but political speech is protected. It is protected. Hate speech. Yeah. So hate speech is protected. So hate speech is speech that attacks or demeans a person or group based on race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, disability, or any other similar traits. So again, attacks or demeans a particular group. That is hate speech. And many people in our country assume that hate speech is illegal, but it is protected speech. America has some of the broadest free speech laws in the country. So, or in the world. So some of the broadest protections in the world for free speech. And our courts have consistently ruled that hate speech is constitutional, and the ACLU regularly defends groups like the KKK's right to share their ideas. And again, this really surprised me when I dug into this. So then I thought, why? Why is this legal in our country? Well, proponents of broad free speech rights think that if the government were to ban hate speech, they would first have to define it. And then that definition could be used to easily censor political, religious, or dissenting views. So they feel that that would limit free speech in the country. Also, laws meant to ban hate speech could then easily be used against unpopular political or social movements. So again, as much as people dislike hate speech, that whole freedom of speech is more important. So we don't accidentally silence folks. Also, it's believed that, let me move on to this one, that allowing hateful views to be expressed makes them more visible. So they can then be challenged and debated and rejected publicly. So I like to say this. So you do have the right to go out into the middle of your community, Highland Park, Glenview, Winnetka, Northfield, Northbrook, and burn an American flag in a park in your community. You have the right to do that. The government cannot, the police cannot punish you for that. However, you may not have many friends after that. The government can't censor, right? The government can't censor, but people in private institutions can, right? And so we as citizens can speak out against that hateful speech. So we say that the best way to fight bad speech is with good speech. And we saw a beautiful example of this in our community a few years ago when there was anti-Semitic literature being distributed throughout our community in Glenview and I think Northbrook. It was being distributed in people's yards. And as a result of that incident, our community came together. It sparked Commissioner Scott Britton's United Against Hate campaigns. There were educational campaigns. People came together to say, no, not in our community. And that's a really great example of good speech combating bad speech. Okay, so now let's talk about censorship. So the American Library Association defines censorship as a suppression of ideas and information that some individuals, groups, or government officials find objectionable and dangerous. And again, in the United States, it is illegal. Our First Amendment protects protects our freedom of speech. So it is illegal for the government to punish citizens because of what they say or because of their speech. Libraries and schools are publicly funded government institutions. Therefore, we cannot legally remove books from our collection or censor because of the viewpoints of our staff, our board, or other residents. Because we are a government institution, it is illegal for us to censor and ban books. And your librarians take that very, very seriously, and we have for many, many years. The ALA, which is the American Library Association, has a number of foundational documents that define our professional principles and the responsibilities of librarianship. And starting with the Library Bill of Rights. So this was a formal policy that was adopted in 1939. So we have been doing this work for many, many years. This has been a pillar to our profession and our institutions from the beginning. So the ALA Bill of Rights calls libraries to provide materials and information presenting all viewpoints. It calls us to give people free and equal access to library resources, regardless of age, background, and belief. And again, this includes not only books, this is all library resources. So availability of our meeting rooms, of our computers. Anything in the library needs to be open to everybody. We cannot restrict it because of somebody's opinion or viewpoint. And then lastly, it calls us to oppose censorship and to not remove materials because of partisan, political, religious, or personal opinions. There is also the ALA Code of Ethics. This was also adopted in 1939, and this is a document that outlines our professional values and frameworks. It guides librarians on how to serve the public and carry out their responsibility. So it calls us to support the right of all people to access information without censorship or bias. And it calls librarians to separate their personal views from their professional role. So it is very important to us, especially our librarians who are in collection development, who are building the collections for the community, to make sure that they're not taking their personal opinions into account when they're buying materials for the library. We work really hard to make sure that we have a broad range of materials in our library to serve our communities. And then lastly, there is our Freedom to Read statement. Has anybody read the ALA's Freedom to Read statement? It's great. Yes, it's very powerful. It is a joint declaration by the American Library Association and the Association of American Publishers, and it was adopted in 1953 during the McCarthy era. And it is a defense of the public's right to read, publish, and access ideas freely. And it is again, it's a powerful document. It's a long document. And I'm going to end by just sharing with you the very end of that so you get a sense of how powerful that is. So we state, this is what the end of the Freedom to Read statement says. We state that these propositions, neither lightly nor as easy generalizations. We here stake out a lofty claim for the value of the written word. We do so because we believe that it is possessed of enormous variety and usefulness, worthy of cherishing and keeping free. We realize that the application of these propositions may mean the dissemination of ideas and manners of expression that are repugnant to many people. We do not state these propositions in the comfortable belief that what people read is unimportant. We believe rather that what people read is deeply important, that ideas can be dangerous, but the suppression of ideas is fatal to a democratic society. Freedom itself is a dangerous way of life, but it is ours. So these are the foundations on which we work. And now Kate is going to come up and share some of the current issues that libraries are facing.
All right, thanks so much, Lindsay. This is a topic that, as I'm talking about the current issues, I'm going to be talking at a national level. But before I kind of go into some of the statistics and share that, a lot of questions that I get asked is, well, sure, that might be happening in Florida or Texas or Alabama, but that's not happening here. People aren't asking us to remove stuff here, not in our communities. And they do. It happens here. We get people coming in to our library carrying a book saying, I don't like that you have this on the shelf. I don't like that you're doing this program. I don't like insert many, many different things. And we are very fortunate to be in a state where our Secretary of State, who is also our state librarian, Secretary Janulius, is a staunch defender of libraries and intellectual freedom. And he, several years ago, helped a law get passed that essentially, the way it says in the news, it's like it prohibits people from banning things. But what it does is if your board or your library bans materials, they will no longer be eligible for any state grants or monies. So you can still do it, but it's going to have financial repercussions. This is not something that I think any of our libraries struggled with. There are libraries in the state that I know have had some really hard conversations. All of our boards were like, yeah, of course, we're already for intellectual freedom. We're already against censorship. So as I'm sharing these things with you, I don't want you to think that it is an other thing, that it is something that we aren't seeing happen here among us. I think a lot of times it's easy to assume that, well, this is not my problem. Our state is fine. And our state is really good. And it isn't just, oh, I started subtitles. I don't know how I did that. Is that okay? I'm going to just keep going. Okay. Okay. So over the past 3 years, 43 states have had book bans. In 2024, there were 821 attempts to censor materials in public libraries. There were almost 2,500 unique titles that were challenged. Since 1990, when the American Library Association Office of Intellectual Freedom started tracking how many items were being challenged, this is the third highest year. Would anybody like to guess what the previous two highest years were? 1936 is a good guess. That is not the correct guess, though, but that was a really good one. 52. 1950s, is a good guess. That is also not correct. A little bit more current. Yeah.
Last week.
Yeah. What you guys just like yesterday, last week, it was 22, 23, and 24 were the three highest. And this used to be a thing that largely was in school libraries, and this is absolutely something that we're seeing in publics. In the 2023-2024 school year, because we don't have the data yet for 24-25 yet, there were over 10,000 book bans. Now, I'm going to just pause here because I'm using the words book bans and book challenges, and those can kind of seem interchangeable, but they're not. A book challenge means someone says, I want this off the shelf. A book ban is when it's actually been taken off the shelf. And so that means that there were over 10,000 book bans, which often had multiple titles in them, that succeeded in local school districts. This is something that is happening everywhere, but there are a few places where it is happening at significantly higher rates. In Florida, there has been state legislation to remove items from the shelf, and you can see that it's working. Last year, there were over 4,500 items that were removed from library shelves, school and public libraries. In Iowa, there was over 3,600. Then you luckily see a big drop. Texas has also tried to pass some legislation. They've gotten more resistance, but that is still banning 538 titles. Our neighbor to the north has also been successful in banning over 400 items. And some of our more southern neighbors, while less, these are still in the top 6. So we know it's happening. We know it's happening here. We know it's happening in 43 states. But who's doing this? How is this happening? Well, I heard someone just say school boards, and that is very accurate. 72% of challenges come from elected officials and organized activist groups. Now, I'm going to share in a little bit who some of those groups are. But previously, when books were challenged, it was often individuals. And you can see here in the green, it's only 5% are library patrons saying, I don't like this on the shelf. I don't, I'm a cat owner. Are there any other cat owners in the audience? Okay. Are there any dog owners? Okay. So I might say we should get rid of all of the books about dogs because cats are superior. I know. It's horrifying that I would say this in a recorded session. But that's what it used to be. It used to be an individual saying, well, I personally don't like this. These groups have gotten money, they've gotten smarter, and they have gotten organized. So a couple of the groups that you will see are Moms for Liberty. It's only 4 years old. No Left Turn in Education. This is focusing primarily on schools, but they are also starting to expand into public libraries. Citizens Defending Freedom. This is a group that is simply out there to ban material. Some of these other groups have other motives and things. Parents' Rights in Education want to control the curriculum and the materials that children are allowed to access, which incidentally, we as librarians 100% support a parent's right to choose for their children what they can and can't read. That's their parents' job. The parents can do that. It is not our job to say what parents should do or not do. But it is our job to make sure that one parent isn't deciding for everybody what people can access. There are a couple groups that are state-centered. So Florida Citizens Alliance, Utah Parents United. And as you can see, there's some common themes about types of materials that are being banned. A lot of the LGBTQ books are seen as, what are some of the things that people have called me on my voicemails? As grooming children, and that we as librarians are pushing out propaganda and seeking to destroy the minds of children by grooming them. And that is what these groups are focused on. They're focused on specific titles, but it also is a much broader sense. And so how are they doing this? Well, they're trying to overwhelm the system, right? It's easy to do. They have coordinated campaigns with massive mailing lists that send out lists of materials. So we'll sometimes get someone bringing in a printed out sheet of paper with a list of books saying, do you have any of these items? And they don't just say, we don't want this one title. They're saying, we want you to get rid of all of these. So they're doing multi-title challenges, which is not something that we have seen happen in previous decades. This is absolutely a new tactic. These groups are also hiring lobbyists to work on elected officials and to get people elected to your local library boards, to your local school boards, to your local state legislatures, so that they can pass new laws like they've done in Florida and Iowa and other states. They also want to scare us. They want us to start censoring ourselves. So if we're like, well, I'm not going to buy this dog book because all the cat people are going to come for me. So I'm just going to avoid buying it because I don't want to deal with them coming and yelling at me. I do love dogs, just for the record. They are very active on social media. Most of these have local chapters and have different Facebook groups that you can join where they share information, and people will put stuff like, come to the school board meeting at this time. The library board is coming at meeting is this day. Ours is this Thursday at 7. If anyone's interested, no one really comes to visit us, but we always enjoy visitors most of the time. And they encourage people to go and speak out. And so if we don't, and Monica's going to talk more about this, if we don't have people that are also speaking out and saying, no, 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 none of that banning here, we don't want that, then it's hard to know because they are so loud. So why? Why are they doing all of this? Why the national campaigns? Why the trying to get people elected? Why the trying to ban hundreds and hundreds of books? They want to restrict access. They want to control the narrative. They want to tell people what to think because they want everyone to think the way that they do. And as Lindsay talked about, it is very difficult sometimes to uphold free speech. It is one of the hardest things we have to do as a library, because there's things that I have to stand up for that I completely disagree with as Kate the individual. But I know that it is so critically important to stand up when I am disagreeing, because it means that we are continuing to engage and have those discussions. What these very focused, very well-funded groups want is they want to shut down conversation. They want to stop us from being able to know what the different viewpoints are. We have books on our shelves. There's a quote that's been attributed to like a dozen different people, so I attribute it to no one because I don't know who the actual speaker of it was, is that a library isn't doing its job if it doesn't have something on its shelves to offend everyone. And I really like that because I know my library certainly does. No, it's not the dog books. But there's stuff that I completely disagree with. And there has been in every library I've worked at. And that tells me, when I see that And I know that we are doing a good job in buying things on a variety of topics and viewpoints and ideas. Because we want to not only read things we agree with, we want to read things that we disagree with to understand, where is this coming from? Why are they thinking this way? And so these groups want to influence what we have access to. They want to remove anything but their own worldview from being able to be looked at and consumed by people in our communities. Okay, so what is the actual impact of everything? About 60% of Americans are concerned that fear of complaints might deter public employees from purchasing books with educational value. Over 2/3 of the nation think that public school teachers and librarians should have substantial say in deciding what books are available. I hope that whoever has mail, it is about reading lots of different books. Okay, so what we are seeing happen though is the soft censorship impacts. So library staff in some states know that if they purchase an item that someone disagrees with, they can go to jail. They can be fined personally, not as a library employee. This is scary stuff that we're dealing with. 97% of school librarians now weigh controversial subject matter when making book purchases. So their efforts are unfortunately working. 27% of librarians in a study from the School Library Journal said that formal challenges influence their future book buying decisions. Books might be purchased, but they might be placed behind the desk, so you have to ask for them. Or only available with a written note from a parent. Teachers and librarians are often asking themselves, who will I make mad by doing this? And we don't want to make people mad. We actually want to just serve our community, and we do not get into this wanting to fight fights. We want to get into this to provide access to information. And so it's hard for us when people are, if you think about someone yelling at you every day about the choices you're making, it's not the funnest. There are direct impacts on student success when books are banned. Book bans diminish the quality of education students receive and the access to information, and it limits their exposure to different perspectives and ways of looking at the world. They stifle critical thinking, suppress intellectual curiosity, limit emotional development, and reduce empathy. This is something that is influenced across the nation, but its biggest impact is on students who hold identities of books that are being banned. So our Black students, our Hispanic students, our LGBTQ students, those students are hit even harder and often not only don't achieve, but turn to self-harm when they don't get to see themselves represented in the items they're finding on the shelf. So do we have any educators in the class? Any educators? Oh, there's a few of you in there. Thank you. I don't think that you ever get to retire from being an educator. I think it's a lifelong commitment, much like being a librarian. So I appreciate you saying that you're retired, but I would bet that you still are out there helping educate the world. Yes, thank goodness for this state, right? Yes. But we are seeing teachers and librarians leave public and school libraries because they don't want to deal with this. They're like, this is not what I signed up for. I signed up to do story time. I signed up to do fun after school programs and to connect kids with books that they can be passionate about. This is not, even though it is what we learn in school, it's not what people signed up for. And so people are leaving. They're like, nope, I'm out. And that's going to have lasting impact on our nation's education system and public libraries. And last but certainly not least, I would say actually top, this is expensive. It's expensive to each of you, to every taxpayer, because we have to pay to have someone. So, for instance, if someone challenges a book, we convene a committee. The committee comes together and says, hey, let's all read this. So then we're paying staff and people to review this. We have to then do research on all of the different things so that we can make a reasoned argument of like, why did we buy this book? And then it's often discussed multiple times. It's often discussed with the board. It sometimes has to be reviewed by the attorney. People are making Freedom of Information Act requests for information, so we're doing that. All of that is preventing us from actually doing the work that the community has hired us to do. In Florida, school districts spend between $34,000 and $135,000 annually to comply with state law requiring review of all challenged books. So like, think about how many books $135,000 could buy. How many after school programs, how many fun activities, how many pencils or boxes of Kleenex. One Texas school district spent $30,000 and 226 hours reviewing one book. There is a cost, and the cost means that every taxpayer is getting less service from their community. And that to me is devastating. So I promise we're going to talk about positive stuff next. Monica's going to be doing all the really, like, don't worry, there is hope. But we want to just take a minute before we turn things over to Monica and talk about why this actually matters. And I hope that Lindsay and I have painted a pretty good picture of like why this matters. It matters to us because it's a core tenet of our profession. But as you know, Don mentioned, libraries and intellectual freedom are a cornerstone of our democracy. They are being able to read and consume things that you agree and disagree with help make us stronger as a nation. It helps make us smarter, and it strengthens our overall democracy. So this matters because it doesn't just affect libraries or schools, it affects every single one of us and the bedrock upon which our country was based. And that's what I think matters. But Lindsay and Monica are going to share why they think this also matters.
Are we?
Yeah.
I don't know if I can top that one, Kate.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I feel very similar. For me, it is about our democracy and the health of our democracy. I think the democracies are the best form of government in our world. And I think that the United States has had a strong democracy and has been a great example. I think our founders were brilliant when they created this system, and I want it to be healthy and I want it to survive. And I think when we start banning books and preventing people from expressing their opinions and their ideas and accessing information, that is harmful to who we are as Americans.
And I'll just add that for me, it's about all of you who have different viewpoints, different interests, and different beliefs. And I want to carry something for each of you in my library, even if it's not the same thing that interests your neighbor. All right, so I know we're already running a little bit over, so I will try to be quick. I'm a fast talker, so that usually works out. So in terms of responding, here's how we can respond. First thing is educating the community, which is what we're doing right now, right? We go to Rotary meetings, we talk at chamber functions, we come and talk to all of you, we talk at conferences, we will talk to individual patrons. It's all about education, right? Because like Kate and Lindsay have said, something may offend you, but let's talk about why, and let's talk about why that's important for us to have as part of our collection. The second thing is crafting clear policies. Policies protect us. The three of us as directors spend a lot of time on policies, right? And that involves legal fees, which we would prefer to spend on collections and programs. So we work to make sure that the policies that we set up explain why we carry what we carry, what are the reasons behind it, what sources we look at, different things like that. Like one change that we recently made to our meeting room policy at Winnetka Northfield, or excuse me, our program policy is that you may only challenge one of our programs if you're a resident of our community. So these outside groups, it really diminishes their ability to challenge our programs because I am creating things and my staff are creating things for Winnetka and Northfield specifically, just like they're doing in Glenview and Northbrook. Training the staff and the board on how to respond to challenges. It's terrible when you get a nasty email or someone comes in shouting at you in your office. My first day or my first week on the job when I was running Sycamore Public Library, someone came in with a program challenge and said, why were we pushing kids to worship the occult and the devil in my library? Because we had a theatrical performer doing a program about the spiritualism movement and debunking it. So I had to explain to the mayor and a bunch of angry people why we weren't actually conducting seances in the library, right? I was like, really? Do you think we could get a real medium out here? Because I can only find an actor, right? So training the staff and the board on how to respond and how to talk to people when these issues come up is a critical component of what we do. Creating talking points for staff. And going back to that program, we created talking points for staff so that when members of the public came in and would potentially be getting upset, staff knew what kind of principles to lean on and what to say to them. And then we coached them through things as a preventative measure. Again, I'd rather not spend my staff's time doing that, but those are some of the things that we have to do to defend everyone's right to access information. Engaging in informal discussions. That is surprisingly where most censorship attempts occur. And you probably wouldn't think that because there are, I'm sure, tens of thousands of those that are not reflected in those statistics. Those statistics are formal challenges, but informal challenges happen every day. And they happen in person most of the time. An angry parent will come up and say, using a comment from the latest caucus survey, why are you displaying a book with penises on the cover in the youth department? And it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm sorry, that's a book on puberty. And that's an important topic. And some parents aren't comfortable speaking to their children about that process. So, we did a display on puberty. So, engaging in informal discussions with people, is one of the regular things that we do that you never hear about. We've talked many a patron out of doing a formal material challenge by having an informal discussion with them about why we carry this book. And our answer is always, and I think I speak for all three of us, is we understand that you may not want your child to access this book. What can we offer for your child? So it's an always, we're keeping this, but we will also get something for you. Tell me what that is. So that's a very important part. And then, of course, having a formal review process that is laid out for people. And so everyone knows what to expect and how things will get resolved in the event someone says, I hear what you're saying, but I still think this is not okay and I still want to push it forward. So here's the bright, sunshiny part of the presentation, how you can help. Okay, there's more than 10 ways, but these are very kind of low effort, common things that you all can do to champion us, right? First thing, surprisingly, is use your library. How many of you in this room have a library card at your home library? Okay, I see most of the hands up. If someone did not raise their hand, please go get your card, okay? But using your library, knowing what your library offers and taking advantage of all of the things is the best way, because we report out our statistics to our boards every month and we make those available on our websites and we track that over time. In a recent example from my library, we had our board meeting last night. In the 2019-2020 year, we had 4,800 ebooks or e-materials circulate. This same month of this year, we had 14,500. So being able to tell a story through data is incredibly impactful when people start coming at you and saying, no one uses the library. Why don't you just get rid of it and give me my tax money back? Which sadly happens. Subscribe to and read your library's newsletters. We love to tell you about what's going on. Sign up for all the things. We will inundate you with information. You will be the town crier about all of the things going on at your library, right? Follow your library's social media accounts and see what we're doing. We are all trying to connect with folks online in ways that are very different than how we've connected with people in the past. So be part of that journey with us. This one is really easy. Wear your library swag or carry your library bags and stuff when you're out. I almost had a heart attack the other day. It was so great. I was getting gas in Wilmette on my way home. And I look over and there's someone getting off the train with one of my library's book bags full of stuff. I was like, get out. This is fantastic. So wear your swag when you're out. Proudly advertise that you're a library supporter. Invite staff like us and other people. Shout out to my girl Denise, who's in the audience. She's one of our Northfield librarians. Invite us to visit organizations that you're a member of and talk about library stuff. As you can tell, we're not passionate about this at all, right? We're very boring speakers. We don't have a lot to say, but we'll come and bore your group to tears, I promise. Know what's going on in your library and speak out when challenges occur. If we ever are rallying for support, if one of these groups or a handful of residents are coming and trying to make things hard and remove materials from our library, we need people to come to our board meeting and say, no, this is wrong. We don't support this. And you need to keep all of the materials in your library. Share positive feedback with us, with our boards, and with staff. As directors, I would say we probably get the least amount of positive feedback because all of the problems roll up to us, which is what we're there for. But it's great when we get a nice email from someone and they're like, oh my gosh, your staff was amazing, or this program, or thank you for doing all of the things that you do. And come and tell our boards. They love hearing positive things about the work that we're doing. Join your friends or your foundation groups. We have a friends group. Do you guys have friends or foundations? Okay, so both and yes. So there are ways to get involved and come and be part of the fun stuff that we're doing. Contact your legislators to talk about libraries when there are issues, legal issues that could be affecting libraries, and tell them what you specifically oppose or support. The Illinois Library Association has an advocacy section. I'm actually the co-chair of that committee for the next 2 years. And there are very easy templates and ways for you to get directly in touch with your legislators to let them hear your voices. And we're very lucky in the North Shore with the legislators that we have. They are all huge library supporters here. And no one used the tools available to you to fight censorship. We've kind of really tried to educate you today and let you know about what's happening. Like I said, the Illinois Library Association's website and the American Library Association's website. There's an organization I really like called Every Library and one called Pen America, where you can see a lot of the legal issues and challenge efforts that are going on across the country, so you can stay aware and no one can surprise you in an unpleasant way. And here are some resources. We will be making this presentation available to you. These are actual links that will take you out to things. And with that, we'd like to thank you for your time and open it up for some questions. I'm going to apologize up front. I have to catch a plane, so I have to leave. But it's been wonderful talking to all of you, and Kate and Lindsay are happy to answer questions.
Since I have the microphone, and I'm the person who.
Oh, I think the
Basically,
yours is not on yet. Oh,
It's on.
it was sounding really quiet.
My niece, who was a school library resource media person, in Florida, left her job because of all of the onerous things that were going on for the schools, and she left the school system in order to get a job in business in another state because it was so onerous in Florida.
And I wish that that was a unique story, but it's not.
How many books have been banned in Illinois? And if a book is banned, what do you do with it? Do you burn it? Do you put it in the back room and not display it and waiting for it to come back into vogue?
We've never banned a book.
Good.
So I don't know.
Yeah. The American Library Association Office of Intellectual Freedom, which tracks the book challenges, doesn't really give a state by state breakdown. But we've also not ever challenged one. And this is why we have very formal processes that talk about, our hope is to always educate and inform. And I think most of the soft censorship stuff, like most of the informal conversations that Monica was talking about, you usually can explain to people, and they might not like that you have the book, but they understand why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's right. When Monica brought that up, I think that was a great point. A lot of times through these conversations, when we're having one-on-one conversations with folks and walking them through all of this, then they tend to take back that challenge, and it doesn't get any further than
Yeah.
the library director generally, at least here.
I have in my hand here access to about 99% of every book in the world. How has that changed your job?
Oh, that's a great question. So for us, a lot of people are like, oh, so like, are people not using libraries anymore because of ebooks and the internet? And so there's a great quote, again, unattributed. I'm sorry, I'm doing great with that today, that Google can provide a million answers, but a librarian can provide the right answer. Right?
And as Monica mentioned, our circulation of those ebooks is just on fire right now. Since
Yes.
the pandemic, so many people are taking advantage of the library's e-resources and ebooks and e-libraries. And we've just seen year after year a large increase. And I think that that's going to continue. So you can still read on your phone. You can just check out those books from the library and you don't have to pay Amazon for them.
And we also, sorry, Ron, I'm going to just add one more thing with that. So back in the 1960s is when audiobooks first came on the market, and everyone foretold the demise of people reading. Audiobooks were going to be the end. Who here has ever listened to an audiobook? Yeah, I'm a huge audiobook listener. So obviously that didn't happen. we are there to connect. We are here to connect people with information, and we just keep adding more formats. So we have paperback and large print. We have ebooks and we have e-audiobooks, and we still have all of our regular physical stuff. And so it just gives people more choices, which is what librarians love.
And I know somebody else has another question, but I just want to add to that. I talked to my staff about the mission of our library, which is to connect people to the power of knowledge, information, and discovery. And I truly believe that has been the mission of libraries since the beginning of time. Since libraries have started, that is what they do. They connect people to the power of knowledge, information, and discovery. But how we do that changes because society changes, the way we learn changes, technology changes. So it used to be scrolls and papyrus, and now we're grappling with AI. We have to continuously evolve and respond to those changes, but at the core of what we do, it's always been to connect people to the power of knowledge, information, and discovery.
Okay, a housekeeping point, first of all. We're going to run a little bit over. If anyone has to leave, do so, but I think we're going to stay if you are able to.
Yeah.
Secondly, you're going to be here
In 2 weeks, you guys get to see me again if you so
and
choose.
You are speaking to 130 people here.
Yes.
So it's a commercial for you to be telling us about how a really excellent library, 2 libraries, but you'll be representing the one that we know in Northbrook runs. But there's a third point, which is we can't let this go because it's so topical. Hate speech, violence is the top of today's current events agenda for anybody that's leading current events. Libraries have the opportunity and struggling with hate speech being unprotected. Yet you are responsible for protecting the patrons. So how do you weigh and what process do you do to evaluate? We really need to allow this, but there's going to be a risk if we do in today's climate. And just to put a personal point to it, it's on both sides. It's not on one side only. But how do you deal knowing that it is a topical point that you have to protect the people, not just from their brains being affected by books, but by their bodies?
So I hope everyone brought a snack because we're going to be here for a few hours. But that's such an excellent question, and it's so timely. I'm going to talk about something that people may have been aware of. So a year ago at the Northbrook Library, we had public meeting rooms available for people to use, and we had someone book a meeting room. They're a Northbrook taxpayer, Northbrook Library card holder, to show a film that they had the public performance rights for. It was a film that many in the community found very objectionable. And we started getting thousands of emails, hundreds and hundreds of phone calls, people saying you cannot allow this. Legally, we had to allow it. For First Amendment, it followed our policies. Like legally, there was no other decision. But we also started getting threats. We at Northbrook and I know Glenview as well, we've dealt with things like bomb threats and people threatening to come in and, hurt people. And we've had staff follow to their cars. Like people are challenging. And so how do we keep people safe? And I can still remember walking into my library on July 6th, 3 years ago, and one of my staff looked at me and said, "I'm really scared. What are you going to do to keep us safe?" And wow, that was really hard because I used to joke that I got into libraries so I wouldn't have to make life and death decisions. I can't make that joke anymore, unfortunately. And the truth is that we are a public building and anyone can walk in our doors anyone can walk in our doors carrying anything. We don't do, we don't go, people don't go through metal detectors. We're not doing pat downs. And we also have an obligation to create a welcoming and as safe environment as possible in our libraries. So we now are spending a lot more money on security. We are working with a security consultant on updating all of our procedures. We are now regularly hiring additional security. So previously during the day, if there was a call on the radio, like, we need a person in charge, it was me or my assistant director. We would go and deal with whatever the issue was. Now it scares me a little because I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to find. Like, am I going to go down and someone has fallen, or is it someone that is going to yell at me? And so we are doing the best that we can, but there's not a perfect solution. And there's a true tension there. And we as libraries have to decide, our police department, while very supportive, has also told us, like, you guys have to make these decisions. We cannot tell you or advise you on what to do. And so this is the thing that I think many libraries are grappling with. That wasn't like, I don't have a good solution. So if anybody has a great solution of like, well, here, have you tried this? And it will fix everything. I would love to hear it. The movie was Israelism.
Yes, I'd like to know why the violators, these groups who violate the First Amendment rights, have no consequences, no prosecution, yet people who defend our rights are suffering dire consequences. What is going on? How is that possible?
I'm not in the Supreme Court, so I can't speak to that, but maybe Lindsay.
I would say that they have the right to challenge those books. That is one of our rights as citizens, to petition our government. So I don't, as much as I disagree with what they're doing, as much as I disagree with it, I think that they have a right to do it. That is their right. But we cannot, we can't then succumb to that. We need to keep those books in our collections. So again, like Kate said, there's a tension, and that's part of freedom. That's part of democracy. We have to coexist with people who think differently than we do. We can't control them, and they shouldn't be expecting to be able to control us. We have to coexist together. So I think that they have a right to challenge those books, but we also have the responsibility to keep those books in our collections.
And this is where you as citizens can really help by paying attention to what's going on at your local school board meetings, at your local library board meetings, and speaking up when you see things happening.
2 points. I'm with the Wilmette Library used bookstore, books down in the Friends system. And we have a section that I started for banned books. And so if you come in and want to buy a book for $1 usually, Harry Potter, all of those books have been banned somewhere. Yes, because of witchcraft, which I always question because they celebrate Christmas. But second point, in Utah, the governor signed a bill that there's a list of books, and I don't remember all of them, but Sarah Moss's books, all of those have been banned from all of the public schools in the whole state of Utah. And what I want to know is, what do they do with them after they've removed them? Are they planning to burn them?
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak to Utah, but I will say that for us, we withdraw about 3,000 items a month, not because of content, but because they get worn out. It's time, we have a fixed space in our building. And so as new things come in, new items or old items leave. We try to rehome them and give them additional life. Many of them go to our Friends of the Library bookshop. We donate them to places like Bernie's Book Bank. We do quarterly book sales, the Friends do. We also will, because we have a lot of fellow libraries downstate that aren't as well funded as we are up here. And so we will send like movies and video games and popular books that are still of interest down to them as well. So we try to rehome them. I am presuming that probably most libraries do that.
Yeah, same. We do all those things.
There are many, many books published every year. The Library of Congress. Local libraries have a small subsection of those.
Correct.
How do you manage to get as broad a selection as possible? I mean, you could focus on you know, one particular political party's.
Oh, I thought you were going to say cats. But yeah, political party.
If you do, how do you, I mean, it's got to be a tremendously difficult situation to choose the books that you're going to put
Right.
in your,
Yeah.
pardon me, small libraries.
I mean, as Uncle Ben says, with great power comes great responsibility, though.
And we use a lot of different tools and techniques. I think in both of our libraries, we have specialized collection development librarians who are responsible for curating and building those collections for different audiences. So we have children's librarians, teen librarians, and adult librarians, and they are focusing on those specific collections. And they are looking at, they're using a lot of data. They're looking at what has gone out in the past, what things speak to our community. They're looking at publishing data. A lot of times we know ahead of time what those bestsellers are going to be, and we know which books our patrons want. And yeah, they're also considering patron requests. So we try to fill as many of those requests from the community that come in. So that's another way as well.
And these are all master's degree trained librarians. So like this is what we went to school for, is specifically to be able to build these balanced collections.
When did all this start? When did book banning start in our country?
Banning has always been here. Yes, I'm sorry.
But when?
But this most recent upsurge and this massive increase
In 2019 is when we really saw an increase. So before we knew a lot of this, throughout our careers, but never did we deal with it
volume.
as at this scale. I think maybe the American Library Association tracked a couple hundred challenges a year. And then in 2019, it just started getting, they started getting higher and higher and higher. And then it just kept growing.
Books did you say in Florida? Oh, yeah. How many books did you say were banned in Florida? Like 30?
4,500, I think 2161. It's some.
That's insane.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Okay, I think we can.
We're happy to answer your question if you want in the back after.
Okay, you want to do that? Who wants to make a question? You have a question? The question.
Thank you both for Mary who left, for all your information. I think that it's a deeper issue. And as you said, it's very societal as far as how the pendulum is going. I'm the head chairperson for a DEI state association. And we noticed that in the southern state of Illinois, the book bans are happening. And I question the ability of people to educate people about what the Constitution is, and what the First Amendment is, because it appears that it's being bypassed, and that would be the most, we hold these rights to have those.
Sure.
So now that DEI is now verboten and everything else, I think we all need to work together and be conscious of what our advocacy should be.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Agreed.
Well, listen, on behalf of the North Shore Senior Center, this was a great presentation. We learned
Thank
a
you.
lot.
Thank you.
So much. It's great.